At my wife's funeral, my son whispered to my daughter-in-law, "Now we just have to deal with the old man." Those words hit me like a knife in the back as I stood by the coffin, and they were already planning my fate. After the funeral, I invited them to dinner, a family dinner, as before. But what I announced at the table shattered their plans. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. Now we just need to deal with the old man. My father is no longer an obstacle. The words cut through the gentle rain like shards of glass. I stood frozen beside Eleanor's coffin, my weathered hands trembling as mourners filed past, offering their condolences in hushed tones. 20 feet away, my son Micah leaned close to his wife Naomi, their voices barely audible above the patter of raindrops on the funeral tent. "Eleanor was such a wonderful woman, Silas. She'll be missed terribly." Mrs. Henderson from next door squeezed my arm, her kind eyes reflecting genuine sorrow. I nodded mechanically, my attention split between accepting sympathy and straining to hear my son's conversation. Naomi adjusted her designer black dress, checking her phone even as dirt was being shoveled onto my wife's grave. "The location is perfect for development. Once we get the property," her manicured fingers gestured dismissively toward our family home visible through the cemetery trees. 40 years of marriage lay beneath that mahogany casket. Eleanor's roses, her Sunday dinners, her gentle voice calling me in from the garden, all reduced to whispered real estate calculations. The rain intensified, drumming against the funeral tent like angry fingers. Dad looks pathetic standing there. Micah's voice carried a cold edge I'd never heard before. "At his age, he can't maintain that big house anyway. We'd be doing him a favor." Naomi smirked, her red lipstick stark against her pale skin. "Your father will understand it's for the best. Family comes first, after all." The way she emphasized family made it clear I wasn't included in that definition. My chest tightened. This was my son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bicycle, who'd helped me build our back deck, who'd once promised Eleanor he'd take care of me when I got old. Now he stood in his expensive suit, plotting my eviction before his mother was even properly buried. The funeral director approached, indicating the service was concluding. Guests began moving toward their cars, black umbrellas blooming like dark flowers across the cemetery. I remained motionless, rain soaking through my old wool coat, watching my son and daughter-in-law exchange satisfied glances. "Perfect timing with the old woman finally gone," Naomi murmured, loud enough for me to catch every poisonous word. "Now we can move forward without any emotional interference." Micah nodded, straightening his silk tie. "Dad's too sentimental about the past. He'll need a push to see reason." They walked toward their sleek black BMW, leaving me standing alone beside the fresh grave. The cemetery workers waited respectfully in the distance, rain dripping from their caps. Eleanor's favorite yellow roses lay scattered across the dark earth, their petals bruised by the downpour. I turned away from the grave, my legs unsteady on the wet grass. 43 years we'd lived in that house. Every board, every nail, every carefully planted flower represented our shared dreams. Now it was just real estate to be liquidated. The drive home blurred past rain-streaked windows, memories flooding back unbidden. The car's heater hummed softly as I pulled into my driveway, muscle memory guiding me past the mailbox Eleanor had painted with cheerful sunflowers. Sitting in the driver's seat, rain pattering on the roof, I closed my eyes and let myself remember when this house meant everything good in the world. Summer 1985. Eleanor stands in an empty lot, her sundress catching the breeze as she points toward imaginary rooms. "The kitchen window should face east, Silas. I want morning light when I make your coffee." Her enthusiasm is infectious as she maps out our future home with her hands, sketching walls in the air. "And here," she spins around, "we'll have a big living room for Christmas mornings. Our children will remember this place forever." I was 35 then, strong enough to swing a hammer all day and still have energy to hold her close on the porch we'd built together. Every weekend for 18 months, we worked side by side, measuring, sawing, painting. Eleanor learned to use a level, while I figured out plumbing from library books. Christmas 1995. 10-year-old Micah tears through wrapping paper under our towering pine tree, his face glowing with pure joy. "Dad, look what Santa brought." He holds up a toy tool set, identical to my real one. "Can we build something together tomorrow, please? Mom said you're the best builder in the whole world." Eleanor laughs from the kitchen doorway, flour dusting her apron from morning biscuits. "Careful what you promise, honey. He's been planning projects all month." That afternoon, Micah and I constructed an elaborate birdhouse, his small hands struggling to hold the wood steady while I guided the drill. "Someday I'll build houses just like you, Dad. Big ones where families can be happy forever." His gap-toothed grin melted my heart. June 2007. Micah's college graduation day blazes sunny and bright. Eleanor dabs her eyes with tissues as our son walks across the stage, diploma in hand. "Engineering degree, just like his father?" she whispers proudly. "Look how handsome he is in that cap and gown." After the ceremony, Micah hugs us both fiercely. "Thank you for everything. The house, the education, the love. I'm going to make you proud. I want to give my kids the same wonderful childhood you gave me." Eleanor beams. "This house will always be your home, sweetheart. No matter how far you travel or how successful you become, you'll always belong here." That evening, we celebrated on our back deck with Eleanor's famous apple pie and Micah's favorite lemonade. Fireflies danced in the garden while we shared stories and dreams. The future stretched ahead like a promise, bright with possibility. Spring 2018. Eleanor tends her rose garden while Micah helps me repair the front steps. "Dad, I've been thinking about getting married soon. Sarah and I want to have the wedding here in Mom's garden. Would that be okay?" Eleanor practically glows with happiness. "Of course, darling. We'll make it the most beautiful celebration. This house was built for family milestones. But Sarah wasn't the woman he eventually married. That relationship ended quietly, and then came Naomi. The memories felt like physical blows now, each one highlighting the vast distance between the loving son I'd raised and the cold stranger at the cemetery. When had everything changed? When had our family legacy become just valuable real estate? Rain continued drumming on the car roof as I stared at our front door, wondering if I even recognized the man my son had become. October 2020. Dr. Martinez's office feels sterile and harsh under fluorescent lights. "I'm sorry, but the tests confirm it's cancer. Stage 2, but very treatable with aggressive chemotherapy." Eleanor grips my hand tightly while Micah sits in the corner chair, his face pale with shock. "Whatever it takes, Doc. Money's no object." His voice cracks with genuine emotion. "She's the strongest woman I know. She'll beat this." For the first few months, we were united again. Micah drove Eleanor to treatments when I couldn't manage the traffic. He brought groceries, helped with household repairs, even spent evenings playing cards like old times. I thought the crisis had restored our family bond. March 2021. Micah brings Naomi to Sunday dinner for the first time. She surveys our modest dining room with barely concealed disdain, her designer outfit clashing with Eleanor's handmade tablecloth. "What a quaint little place," Naomi comments, her smile sharp as a blade. "So authentic. Very retro." Eleanor, weakened from chemotherapy but still gracious, offers homemade rolls. "Thank you, dear. We've been happy here for 36 years. Naomi declines the food with a wave of her manicured hand. "Oh, I don't eat refined carbs, but it's sweet how you maintain these old-fashioned traditions." That night, after they leave, Eleanor looks troubled. "There's something cold about that girl, Silas. She barely spoke to me during dinner." Summer 2022. Micah's visits become sporadic. When he does come, Naomi stays in the car, checking her phone while he makes hurried small talk. Eleanor's treatments are getting harder, leaving her exhausted and frail. "Why doesn't Micah stay longer?" Eleanor asks after another brief visit. "And why won't Naomi come inside anymore?" I have no good answers. When I call Micah, he's always busy with work, with Naomi's family, with their social obligations. "Dad, you need to understand. I have responsibilities now. Naomi's father is considering me for a partnership in his development company. I can't just drop everything for family visits." The word "just" cuts deeper than he realizes. Fall 2023. Eleanor's condition worsens. I call Micah desperately one evening when she spikes a fever. "Can't you handle it yourself, Dad? I'm at a business dinner with Naomi's parents. The Vanderbilts don't reschedule for family emergencies." I drive Eleanor to the hospital alone, her hand cold in mine as we wait in the emergency room. Winter 2024. The last time Micah visits before Eleanor's death, Naomi actually comes inside. She walks through our living room like she's appraising merchandise. You know, Micah, this location is prime real estate. Your parents are sitting on a gold mine and don't even realize it. Her voice carries the tone of someone discussing livestock. Really? I never thought about it that way. Darling, you can't let sentimentality cloud good business sense. Your father won't live forever, and maintaining this place will become impossible for him. Wouldn't it be kinder to help him transition to something more manageable? I watch my son's expression change, calculation replacing compassion. Maybe you're right. Dad is getting older. That night, Eleanor cries quietly in our bedroom. He's lost to us, Silas. That woman has poisoned his heart against his own family. 3 weeks later, Eleanor is gone, and I'm standing at her graveside listening to my son plot my eviction. The rain had stopped while I sat remembering. Our house looked the same as always, but everything felt different now. Eleanor's roses drooped in the garden, and the windows seemed to stare back at me like empty eyes. I climbed out of the car slowly, my 70-year-old bones protesting against the dampness. Tomorrow, I knew, Micah would come with his demands and ultimatums, but tonight I just wanted to grieve my wife and mourn the son I'd apparently lost, long before I realized he was gone. But tomorrow came sooner than expected. Micah strode across the muddy cemetery ground with purpose, his expensive Italian shoes squelching in the wet earth. Behind him, Naomi picked her way carefully around puddles, her designer heels struggling for purchase on the slippery grass. Dad, we need to talk. Micah's voice carried the tone he probably used in boardrooms, confident, commanding, leaving no room for negotiation. Reginald has made a generous offer for the house. $5,000, cash, immediate closing. I stared at him, raindrops still clinging to my funeral program. At your mother's funeral? Have you completely lost your mind? Business doesn't stop for sentiment, Dad. He adjusted his silk tie, completely unbothered by the sacred ground beneath our feet. This is actually the perfect time to discuss practical matters. Clean slate, fresh start. Naomi stepped forward, her red lipstick garish against the gray cemetery backdrop. It's actually quite generous for such an old property, Silas. The location is really the only valuable asset you have. Valuable asset? My voice cracked with disbelief. That's my home. Our home. Eleanor and I built every inch of it together. Sentimental value isn't market value, Dad. Micah pulled out his phone, checking messages even as we stood beside his mother's fresh grave. You're 70 years old. Maintaining a house that size will become impossible. We're offering you a graceful exit. The remaining funeral guests had stopped their quiet conversations, sensing the tension. Mrs. Henderson glanced over nervously, probably wondering why we were conducting business at a burial site. 40 years we lived there. My hands shook as I crumpled the funeral program. That house is worth $200,000 minimum. You're offering peanuts. Naomi laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Oh, Silas, you really have no idea how real estate works, do you? That neighborhood is going downhill. The house needs extensive renovations. $5,000 is more than fair. It's a steal, and you know it. I stepped closer to my son, rain beginning to fall harder. You're trying to rob your own father on the day we buried your mother. I'm trying to help you, Dad. Micah's mask of patience was slipping. Reginald's company has plans for that entire block. If you don't sell voluntarily, they'll find other ways to acquire the property. Eminent domain, code violations, tax assessments. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. His eyes went cold. This can be easy or difficult. The choice is yours. Naomi smiled triumphantly, already counting her victory. My father doesn't lose, Silas. Ever. You should feel grateful he's giving you this opportunity. The other mourners were definitely watching now. Several had moved closer, probably thinking a family argument was about to explode into something physical. The funeral director approached diplomatically, clearly wanting to restore dignity to the proceedings. I think, I said slowly, my voice gaining strength, you should leave, both of you. Get out of my sight before I do something we'll all regret. Micah straightened his expensive suit jacket. You have 48 hours to accept the offer, Dad. After that, things get complicated. They walked away toward their BMW, Naomi's laughter echoing across the cemetery like a crow's call. I watched them drive off, my fists clenched so tightly, my knuckles had gone white. Eleanor's grave marker gleamed wetly in the rain. $5,000 for everything we'd built together. The house felt like a mausoleum when I finally arrived home. Every shadow held Eleanor's absence. Every silence screamed her name. I moved through rooms that suddenly seemed too large, too empty, too full of memories that would never be repeated. Her reading glasses still lay folded on the kitchen table beside yesterday's crossword puzzle. Half finished. The medication bottles lined up on the bathroom counter like tiny sentinels, their purpose now meaningless. I touched each one, remembering how carefully I'd organized her pills each morning, how she'd smiled and called me her personal pharmacist. In the living room, family photographs covered the mantelpiece like a timeline of better days. There was Micah at 5, gap-toothed and grinning as he helped me paint the front porch. Micah at 16, proudly displaying his driver's license while Eleanor beamed beside him. Micah at his college graduation, his arm around both his parents, his face radiating love and gratitude. When had that love died? When had we become obstacles instead of family? I sank into Eleanor's favorite armchair, the one by the window where she'd spent her final months watching birds at the feeder. Her lavender scent still clung to the fabric, faint but unmistakable. I pressed my face into the cushion and breathed deeply, trying to capture what remained of her presence. "Eleanor," I whispered to the empty room, "they want to tear down everything we built together. On the day I buried you, they offered me $5,000 for our life's work." The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked relentlessly, marking time that felt meaningless now. Outside, the rain had intensified, drumming against windows like impatient fingers. The sound reminded me of the cemetery, of Micah's cold voice delivering ultimatums beside his mother's grave. 48 hours. That's what he'd given me. I closed my eyes and imagined Eleanor's reaction to today's events. She would have been heartbroken, but not surprised. "I told you that woman was poison," she would have said. "I tried to warn you about what she was doing to our boy." She had tried. During her illness, Eleanor had mentioned Naomi's subtle cruelties, her calculated comments designed to drive wedges between family members. I dismissed it as chemotherapy-induced paranoia, too focused on medical treatments to see the emotional manipulation happening right in front of me. Now the house felt haunted by all the conversations we should have had, all the warnings I should have heeded. The walls that had once protected our family's happiness now seemed fragile, vulnerable to forces I'd never anticipated. Thunder rolled overhead, and lightning briefly illuminated the garden where Eleanor's roses drooped under the weight of accumulated rain. She'd planted each bush with specific intention, the yellow ones for friendship, the red for passion, the white for new beginnings. Naomi probably saw them as landscaping obstacles to be bulldozed. I must have dozed in Eleanor's chair because suddenly the room was darker and the rain had stopped. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as I attempted my usual morning routine. Coffee brewing, newspaper unfolded, trying to pretend this was just another ordinary day instead of the morning after my world collapsed. My neck ached from sleeping in Eleanor's chair, and my reflection in the coffee pot showed an old man who looked every one of his 70 years. The doorbell rang at exactly 8:30. Through the peephole, I saw Micah and Naomi, standing on my front porch like door-to-door salesmen. Micah carried a leather briefcase, and Naomi wore a smug expression that made my blood pressure spike. They hadn't bothered calling first. Clearly they expected immediate capitulation. "We're here for your answer, Dad." Micah pushed past me into the foyer without invitation, Naomi following with the entitled confidence of someone who believed the house already belonged to her. "My answer is no." I closed the door harder than necessary. "Absolutely not." Naomi surveyed the living room like she was already planning renovations. "That's unfortunate, Silas. My father's lawyers have reviewed the property records very carefully. This can go easy or it can go hard." "Is that a threat?" "It's reality." She settled onto Eleanor's couch without permission, her designer purse placed possessively on the coffee table. "Judge Morrison owes my family several significant favors. You won't win in court, and fighting us will cost you everything anyway." Micah opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency. We're offering you one final opportunity to walk away with dignity intact. $5,000 and a comfortable apartment in Sunset Manor. They have excellent facilities for seniors. I'm not going to a nursing home. My voice came out stronger than I felt. This is my house. I built it with my own hands. Sentimentality is expensive, Dad. Micah's tone suggested he was dealing with a particularly stubborn child. The property taxes alone will bankrupt you within 2 years. The roof needs replacement. The plumbing is outdated. The electrical system violates current codes. All fixable problems, Naomi laughed, examining her manicured nails. With what money? Your pension barely covers groceries. You're living in a deteriorating asset that's bleeding value every month. We have resources you can't imagine, old man. Her mask of politeness finally slipped completely. My father owns half the city council, 3 county commissioners, and enough judges to make your life very uncomfortable. Fighting us isn't brave, it's stupid. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Get out. Excuse me. Get out of my house. Right now. Micah stood up, snapping his briefcase shut. You're making a serious mistake, Dad. We tried to do this nicely. Nicely? I moved toward the door, gesturing for them to follow. You offered me pennies for my life's work at your mother's funeral. There's nothing nice about anything you've done. Naomi gathered her purse with theatrical indignation. You'll regret this stubbornness, Silas. My family doesn't accept defeat gracefully. Neither do I. I held the door open until they had no choice but to leave. Micah paused on the threshold, his expression mixing frustration with something that might have been genuine concern. This isn't over, Dad. I hope you understand that. Yes, I said quietly. I'm counting on it. After they drove away, I stood in my kitchen, hands shaking with adrenaline. 48 hours had become immediate war. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated their enemy. Time to prove them wrong. 15 minutes of pacing the empty house had burned off the rage, leaving something far more dangerous in its place. Clarity. I stopped at Eleanor's desk in our small home office, surrounded by 40 years of careful record-keeping. If they wanted to play games with my property, they'd discover I wasn't the helpless old fool they imagined. The file cabinet yielded treasures, house deed, clear title, no liens or encumbrances, insurance policies showing full replacement value at $200,000, property tax records proving consistent payments for 4 decades. Most importantly, buried in the back of the legal documents folder, Harold Thompson's business card from 1995, edges yellowed but still readable. Harold had guided us through the original purchase, explaining every clause with the patience of a true friend. We'd shared countless dinners over the years, fishing trips before Eleanor got sick, neighborhood barbecues where our children played together. If anyone could help me protect what Eleanor and I had built, it would be Harold. I spread the documents across Eleanor's kitchen table, the same surface where we'd planned our garden layouts, and discussed Micah's college applications. Her reading glasses still lay beside the morning crossword, and I found myself putting them on to examine the fine print more carefully. Strange how wearing them made me feel closer to her strategic mind. They think I'm just a helpless old man, I muttered to her empty chair. They're about to learn otherwise. My engineering background had taught me to approach problems systematically. What were the variables? Micah wanted the house for Reginald's development project. They were using intimidation tactics, assuming I'd cave under pressure. They had money and corrupt connections, but I had something more valuable. Legitimate ownership and 4 decades of community standing. Eleanor always said I was too methodical, taking forever to analyze problems that required immediate action. Today, that systematic thinking was exactly what I needed. Emotion had gotten me nowhere this morning. It was time for strategy. I examined Harold's business card, remembering how he'd refused payment for helping us with the original purchase. Friends don't charge friends for doing what's right, he'd said. I wondered if he still felt that way. The grandfather clock chimed 11:30. Harold would be in his office by now, probably reviewing contracts or preparing for court. I picked up the phone, dialing the number I'd memorized 40 years ago, wondering if he still answered his own calls in that small-town practice. The next morning, I drove downtown to Harold's law office. the same modest brick building where he'd practiced for 25 years. Main Street looked exactly as it had decades ago. Small shops, American flags hanging from streetlights, the kind of place where handshake deals still meant something. Harold's secretary ushered me into his private office, walls lined with law books and family photographs. He looked older, grayer, but his handshake remained firm and his eyes sharp, with the intelligence that had made him Evergreen's most respected attorney. Silas, I'm so sorry about Eleanor. She was a remarkable woman. He gestured to a chair across from his desk, already covered with legal papers. Your call yesterday concerned me greatly. Tell me exactly what happened. I explained everything. The overheard conversation at the funeral, Micah's shocking offer, Naomi's threats about corrupt judges and forced sales. Harold's expression grew darker with each detail, occasionally shaking his head in disbelief. I can't believe Micah would do this, he said finally, especially now, so soon after losing Eleanor. This is beyond callous. It's vicious. Can they actually force me to sell? Harold pulled out my property deed, studying it through his reading glasses. Your ownership is absolutely clear. No liens, no disputes, no legal grounds for forced sale. However, he paused, choosing his words carefully. The threats about corrupt judges aren't entirely empty. Judge Morrison does have a reputation for favoring certain developers, though something this blatant would attract attention. So what are my options? Conventional approach? Document everything, file complaints, fight in court? You'd probably win, but it would cost thousands in legal fees and take years to resolve. Harold leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. However, there's another way, one that would protect your house permanently. I'm listening. Charitable transfer with lifetime occupancy rights. You donate the house to a legitimate charity. Take the tax deduction, but retain the legal right to live there until you die. The charity gets a valuable asset for their mission. You get tax benefits and absolute protection from seizure. The idea was brilliant in its simplicity. They couldn't touch it? Impossible. Charitable assets are completely protected from creditors, family disputes, or forced sales. You'd essentially make the house untouchable while keeping your home. Harold pulled out his address book, flipping to a business card. Hope Against Cancer Foundation in Richmond. They do excellent work, and given Eleanor's struggle, it would be a fitting memorial. I studied the card, imagining Eleanor's approval. She'd always supported cancer research, donating what we could afford during her treatments. How quickly could this be arranged? If you're serious, I can call today, set up a meeting tomorrow. The paperwork takes a few hours, but once it's filed, your house becomes legally untouchable. Do it. Harold reached for his phone, then paused. Silas, I need to ask, are you certain about this? It's permanent. You can live there forever, but you can't change your mind and sell later. I thought about Eleanor's roses, about Micah's cold eyes at her funeral, about 40 years of memories they wanted to bulldoze for profit. Harold, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. The drive to Richmond took 45 minutes through Virginia countryside that Eleanor had always loved. Rolling hills, horse farms, the kind of scenery that reminded you why we'd chosen to build our life in this part of the world. I'd called in sick to my part-time consulting job. Some things were more important than maintaining appearances. Hope Against Cancer Foundation occupied a modern building near the medical district, its lobby filled with inspiring stories of survivors and researchers. The development director, Margaret Chen, greeted me with genuine warmth and professional competence. Mr. Hicks, Harold Thompson explained your situation. First, let me express our condolences on your wife's passing. Cancer touches every family, and memorial gifts like yours help us continue the fight. Margaret led me to a conference room where the Foundation's legal counsel, David Rodriguez, had prepared a stack of documents. The property appraisal Harold had arranged valued the house at exactly $200,000, 40 times what Micah had offered. The process is straightforward, David explained, spreading papers across the polished table. You're donating the property to our foundation with a retained life estate. You'll receive a charitable tax deduction for the full value, while keeping the absolute right to occupy the house for the remainder of your life. And no one can force me to sell? Impossible. Once we accept this donation, the property belongs to Hope Against Cancer Foundation. It cannot be seized, sold, or transferred by anyone except us, and we have no intention of disturbing your occupancy." Margaret smiled, reviewing the donation paperwork. "This gift will fund significant cancer research programs. We're also interested in your wife's garden. Perhaps we could create a small memorial healing space for patients who need quiet reflection." The idea brought tears to my eyes. Eleanor's roses serving a purpose beyond beauty, helping people face the same battle she'd fought. She would have loved that. 3 hours later, I walked out of the foundation offices with signed documents, legal protections, and a sense of justice I hadn't felt since Eleanor's diagnosis. My house was safe, her memory was honored, and Micah's greedy scheme had just collapsed before it truly began. Driving home through the Virginia hills, I imagined the conversation I'd have with my son tomorrow. He thought he was taking candy from a helpless old man. Instead, he was about to discover that his father still had a few tricks left to play. The Foundation's copy of the deed transfer sat on my passenger seat like a shield against everything the Vanderbilt family could throw at me. Let them bring their corrupt judges and legal threats. My house belonged to cancer research now, and I had lifetime occupancy guaranteed by federal law. Eleanor would have been proud. 28 hours had passed since I signed those foundation papers, and my hands no longer trembled with uncertainty. Instead, they held the cordless phone steady as I prepared for the performance of my lifetime. Micah expected a broken old man begging for mercy. He was about to get exactly what he wanted to see. At 7 o'clock, I dialed his number, rehearsing the defeated tone in my mind. When he answered with his usual business-like efficiency, I let my voice crack slightly. "Son, I've been doing a lot of thinking since your visit yesterday." "Dad?" Surprise colored his voice. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon. Maybe you and Naomi were right. Maybe I am being too sentimental about this old place." I paused, injecting just the right amount of weary resignation. "Your mother always said families should stick together, especially during difficult times." I could practically hear his satisfaction through the phone line. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this, Dad. Naomi and I were worried you'd make this harder than necessary. Why don't you both come for dinner tomorrow evening? We can discuss the details properly, like a family should." I made my voice smaller, more vulnerable. "I've been so lonely since Eleanor passed. It would mean a lot to have you both here." "That sounds perfect." Micah's tone had shifted to barely contain triumph. 6:30? Perfect. I'll make Eleanor's pot roast, the way she used to for Sunday dinners when you were young. After we hung up, I allowed myself a smile that would have terrified them both. They thought they were coming to collect their prize. Instead, they were walking into the most satisfying conversation of my life. I spent the evening preparing Eleanor's recipes, each familiar task bringing her memory closer. She would have loved this moment, justice served with her favorite meals, using the very house they'd tried to steal as the setting for their downfall. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. They arrived at 6:30 sharp, dressed like they were attending a business merger rather than a family dinner. Micah wore his most expensive suit, and Naomi had chosen an outfit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. They entered our home like conquering generals, surveying their new territory. "Dad, you look better than yesterday." Micah's assessment was clinical, as if evaluating livestock. "More accepting of reality." Naomi wandered through the living room, touching Eleanor's antiques with the casual entitlement of someone who believed they already owned everything. "These old pieces might have some vintage value. We'll need an appraiser before the estate sale." I served appetizers in Eleanor's good china, the dishes we'd used for special occasions when Micah still loved us. They ate without comment, discussing renovation plans and demolition timelines as if I weren't sitting 3 feet away. "Reginald's contractors can start within 2 weeks," Naomi explained between bites of Eleanor's famous spinach dip. "The entire neighborhood is zoned for commercial development now. Your little house is actually the last holdout." "Really?" I managed to sound impressed rather than disgusted. "How efficient." During the main course, they outlined my future with the detached professionalism of funeral directors. Sunset Manor had an opening in their assisted living wing. The $5,000 would cover the security deposit, and my pension would handle monthly fees. They'd already spoken to the administrator. Mom would have wanted you to be practical about your future, Micah said, cutting his pot roast with surgical precision. She always worried about you managing alone. The casual cruelty of using Eleanor's memory to justify their theft made my blood pressure spike, but I maintained my mask of defeated acceptance. They were so close to complete victory that they'd stopped pretending to care about appearances. Finally, you're being sensible about this situation, Silas. Naomi raised her wine glass in a mock toast. Fighting us would have been expensive and pointless. This way, everyone wins. Everyone wins, I repeated quietly, thinking about the foundation documents hidden in Eleanor's desk drawer. They spent dessert discussing interior demolition and foundation work, casually erasing 40 years of our lives with architectural terminology. Naomi photographed various rooms with her phone, probably sending updates to her father's development team. We should get the paperwork signed tonight, Micah suggested over Eleanor's apple pie. No point in delaying the inevitable. Of course. I stood slowly, every movement calculated to suggest arthritic defeat. Let me get the documents from the desk. But instead of the house deed they expected, I returned with papers that would destroy their dreams forever. Before we sign anything, I said, settling back into my chair with the foundation transfer documents, there's something you both need to understand. Naomi barely looked up from her phone. What now, Silas? More sentimental nonsense about family memories? The house no longer belongs to me. I spread the legal papers across Eleanor's dinner table, like a poker player revealing a royal flush. I transferred it to the Hope Against Cancer Foundation 3 days ago, in Eleanor's memory. The silence that followed was absolute. Micah's fork clattered against his dessert plate as he reached for the documents, his face draining of color as he read. Naomi's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips, suspended in disbelief. This can't be legal. Micah's voice had gone hoarse. You can't just give away $200,000 worth of property. Already done, notarized, filed, and accepted. I leaned back in Eleanor's chair, feeling her approval radiating through the room. The transfer is irrevocable. You can't touch this property ever again. Naomi shot to her feet, her designer chair scraping against hardwood floors. You manipulative old fool. Do you have any idea what you've done? My father had contracts ready, investors lined up. Your father can invest in someone else's neighborhood. I gathered the papers calmly. Every dollar from this house will fund cancer research in your mother's name. The foundation was thrilled to accept such a generous memorial donation. We'll challenge this in court. Micah slammed his fist on the table, making Eleanor's china jump. You're senile, incompetent. With what standing? You have no legal claim to property I never owned when I made the transfer. I stood up, suddenly feeling stronger than I had in months. Harold Thompson made sure every document was perfect. Your friend Judge Morrison can't help you when there's no case to hear. Naomi's face had gone purple with rage. You think you're so clever, don't you? Well, enjoy your little victory, old man. You'll die alone in this house with no family, no support. I'll die in my home, surrounded by 40 years of happy memories with a woman who actually loved me. I moved toward the front door, opening it wide. You came here thinking you'd won. Instead, you've lost everything. Now get out. This isn't over. Micah grabbed his coat, his composure finally cracking completely. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is not seeing what you'd become before your mother died. I held the door steady as they stumbled toward their BMW. She deserved better from the son she raised. They drove away in furious silence, probably already calling Reginald with news of their failure. I watched their taillights disappear around the corner, then closed the door on that chapter of my life forever. Walking back through the house, I touched Eleanor's favorite photographs, her reading chair, the kitchen table where we'd planned our future. The Hope Against Cancer Foundation would own these walls, but the love inside them belonged to us always. Justice served, Eleanor honored, home protected. Some revenge is worth waiting 70 years to perfect. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.